Welcome back to my channel. So this week is all about experimenting. So I wanted to try to master mortise and tenon joinery with just using my router table. And the main reason why I want to use my router table instead of a handheld router is because I wanted to be able to use dust collection. I am not a fan of chips flying at my face. The other thing that I'm experimenting this week is I got a new camera, and so I figured I might as well try to figure out how to use that while I'm practicing instead of waiting until my next build. I'm marking the boards at approximately 1/4 of an inch, and then I'm going to follow the lines around so that I'll have a good clear spot for starting and stopping the cut for the mortise. The best tutorial that I've found on this technique is from Guy's workshop. So, he certainly has this mastered much more than I do. I am just trying to get the hang of this so that I'm able to use this for my next project. I'll post a link to his video in the description. Painter's tape works really well for being able to mark out where the beginning and the end of the bit are. So I'm going to take a little board and just use that as a straight edge once I've twisted the bit to assure that the widest points are on either direction. And then I'm just going to mark a line on both sides, and that's going to give me a reference point for where I'm going to start the mortise and where I'm going to end it. Theoretically, my setting should be exactly in the center of the board, but that is not always the case. So I'm just going to use the scrap end of this board. If this were one of the boards I was using for my project, I would just use a board that was planed the exact same thickness, and I'm just going to check and see if I'm exactly in the center. And I'm just a hair off, so I'm just going to move this just one tiny little click on my fence to assure that I really do get the center of the board. I'm using a 1/4 inch straight bit router bit, so if you just try to push the board straight down, it won't go down because in the very middle of the top, there is no cutting. So I'm going to just gently work this back and forth over the top of the bit until I get it started, and then I'm able to move through and get to the point where I'm going to end that cut. I'm taking passes that are going to be a little bit less than 1/4 of an inch, really up to 1/4 of an inch is as deep as you should go for each pass. All right, so I'm trying out the zoom on my new camera, so hopefully this will help you see those two lines that I have and how I'm going to just, gently drop this down, wiggle it a little bit once I get it started, make sure I go to both of the lines, and then move away from the line before I lift that board up. Now, interestingly enough, one of the main reasons why I wanted to use my router table was for dust collection, but then I was so focused on getting my camera set up that I forgot to turn on my dust collector. But even without the dust collector running, I still had tremendously less dust than if I had used a handheld router. My mortise is about 7/8 of an inch, so I'm just going to go a little bit past the 3/4 inch board that I have here to assure that I don't overshoot it, but that I get pretty much a full fit. I'm going to lower the bit and start with very shallow passes just on the very end to assure that I'm able to make sure that I get a good fit and don't end up too thin. I'm using a large piece of plywood behind my board so that I'm able to ride along that fence securely, trying to take an end of a board over a router bit. It isn't very safe, and certainly you don't have a lot of control. If you use a wider bit for this part, then you won't have to take quite as many passes. So at this point I have a really nice snug fit for the depth, and I just need to make sure that I get the width right. So I continued to sneak up until I had the width of it correct, but it's still not going to fit in there because the mortise has rounded edges and the tenon has square edges. So we're going to just lop off the corners of the tenon and make this an easy job. So I picked up this tip from Guy's video as well. So I'm just going to take a chisel and take off the little corners, and that's going to be a lot easier than chiseling down in to the mortise to square those off perfectly. So even though I bought a fancy camera, I still am not in the habit of looking up and actually making sure that I have the right view. So I am missing putting this together a little bit, but it is going to make an extremely nice, tight, secure joint. So I'm pretty encouraged by this, and I will probably try a few more practice runs, and particularly on some hardwoods instead of this pine, and make sure that I have this mastered before I start my next build. If you're enjoying my content, please like and subscribe, and have an awesome day.